thickness to it. The reason I do that is so the different paint colors that come through aren't just some weird like gradient from one point to another. It truly does mix it up depending on where I start each time. And eventually, as we add shading to the green with different greens and some browns and such, it'll actually give us different color gradients as they mesh together. But this is my first time painting here in over 2 weeks. I got sick there for a while. The COVID finally caught up to the family as I cough. So I was glad to be able to hop back in. I really do enjoy painting. It's a fun little hobby to learn how to do these things. Get a little bit of a darker green as well here. Got a new, oh, that is way too wet. Scratch sheet here. This, you can see it's got some doodles on it. I was going to do a Tarman from Return of the Living Dead, or a Thing, a Ben Grimm, not a John Carpenter. But neither of those sketches were coming together. So I said, hey, I need a new scratch board. I'm going to paint, so might as well just grab one of those that I already had cut. I think once we get done here with the maybe first pass of all the vines, ivy, whatever you want to call it, start working in on some of the lettering and the Triforce. You can see it pretty much already colored the entire background with the exception around the sword. And that was so we can easily have stuff poking through the green without having to manually add it back in later. We can just kind of leave some open space and it'll come through for us. So back down here is kind of where I started. So let's kind of keep working our way over to meet that piece. It's a nice dark green, I like that. I've got 3 different greens here on the palette. One of them kind of scared me. I was looking at, the life of Bob Ross, and while he was a lifelong smoker, he did die of cancer, but also he painted with things like titanium white and cadmium yellow, and like cadmium poisoning is a thing. It can give you cancer. And one of the greens I'm using here, even though these are watercolors, was phthalocyanine green. And phthalo blue, I don't know if that's one of the toxic colors, but anytime you add cyanine, like cyanide to me, I don't want to be painting with a cyanide color. That just sounds like a bad idea if you ask me. But we've also got some black, white, a white, lemon yellow, and orange yellow mixture for the background here. Just orange yellow we're going to use. We're going to try that maybe with some white for the Triforce itself. Red and white we're going to use for the Zelda name, then some browns we're going to use for details on the leaves, and the lettering, two different browns out there, and then blue and white, which we're going to use for what I'm assuming is the Master Sword. But if you look at the logo, it does not look like the Master Sword. Appears to be like a broadsword, while the sword on the intro art, what is that, a rapier, an épée, a nice little filigree around the hilt and the handle, the bulbous pommel. Now I've got another one queued up, a screen like this. It's the Contra intro screen. And as I was prepping it, I was like, you know what? I am not a pixel painter. That's not what we're going for here. Even though I am not going for a very wet watercolor, this is more of a gouache sort of effect here. I am using watercolors. I'm not everything has to be so strictly defined, and so I don't need to go for pixel precision, especially when the pixels themselves are supposed to be approximations of other things that you would find more naturally. In this case, you've got like the freedom of greenery. I'm not going to follow a perfect square shape. That's not how plants work. Same thing with Castlevania. You're going to have some film grain, man. That main screen is a film strip, or not a film strip, but a strip of film. So I can have a lot more freedom than if somebody was doing a strict interpretation of everything has to go right here to be screen perfect. We are not going for screen perfect, are we? No, we are not. We're going for screen inspired, to be certain. But we are free to interpret, to adapt, to ignore, as we wish. Trying to get some more color here. Also interesting news, the Mad Balls that I had painted, I really enjoyed doing. I did the full first series of 8 plus an extra. I did Lock Lips from series 2. And I liked those so much, I had a printer print them out for me, card size, and I'm going to toss them in with candies this Halloween. I'm just going to give out random Mad Balls painting trading cards with a special email address and our Twitch. So if people like the cards, they can come watch us paint more nerdy stuff. Is it a dumb idea? Yes, it is, but look at the name of what you're watching. It's not another thought out and well reasoned argument. That is not who we are or what we represent. It is not. We are another terrible idea, yes? That's what we are. That's what we do. And right now what we do is paint a lot of leaves. I know a lot of folks this weekend are at East Coast Throwdown, which is great to see. FGC is making its way through all this COVID stuff still. People still wearing masks, which is great. So thanks to the ECT team. I don't know if that's a mandatory or it's just kind of a courtesy thing people are doing, but I appreciate it nonetheless. We got that top strip. Let's come together. The two small sections here, plus some lettering that will go, or pardon me, greenery that will go around the lettering. We'll get there. For now, we will What is your favorite Zelda game? I have actually played surprisingly few Zelda games. I know I played the heck out of the original. Excuse me. And I played a lot of Wind Waker. Don't think I beat Wind Waker. I probably hit Zelda 2 back in the day. I was never interested in the N64 Zeldas. Just were not my thing at all. Everybody seemed to love them then and now. But I didn't like the presentation. The gameplay just did not look fun to me. So I skipped out on a generation's worth at least. I've started A Link to the Past like a 1,000 times and never committed to it. You know, like I've gone through Super Metroid several times, but never have really put time into A Link to the Past, which looks like it should be my favorite. That was like a prime era for gaming for me, the SNES, Super Nintendo era. Didn't play Twilight Princess. I did play Link's Crossbow Training. A friend of mine, had a lot of fun with that one for a while. Didn't play Link's Awakening, though I've considered it for the Switch. We have Breath of the Wild. I have not played it. It is just sitting in our Switch case. Alright, almost there with our first pass on the greenery. We will definitely need to do some blending of these different areas. But I think it's actually going to look pretty nice. As I said, I'm enjoying kind of the free form. We've drawn in some guidelines for kind of where we expect things to be, but we are not beholden to them in any way. We can kind of just feel things out. We're going to come back through again with highlights, shadows, Some woody stems. I feel like all this would be appropriate decor for like a Mediterranean restaurant. Greek, Lebanese maybe. Speaking of which, I could go for some Greek food right now. I think we're having chicken and rice tonight. I will have to wait till we're done at least with a couple more bits. Alright, so we've got a first pass of the greenery. So let's go bold. We need to get some red going here. My color sense is not perfect, but I think I want to go for a reddish. I think this will do just fine. I don't even know why I switch brushes, because 9 times out of 10 I actually want to go back to the same brush, even unless I'm like filling an entire background layer. I want to come back and do a fine line brush. My wife, who was an acrylics girl in her younger days, comes down and is like, how can you paint so small? She is used to big brushes, big canvases, big images, rough, and her stuff, sometimes I really, really enjoy it. But I can't work in that scale or that style. I am very much this guy. It's funny, we used to have her stuff hanging up around the house, and I think soon we'll probably have some of my stuff hanging up around the house. We have the kids' stuff hanging up around the house. It's just a very family art oriented household, I suppose. Yeah, I think this is actually going to come out pretty nice. Oh, careful, careful, dude. You almost made yourself very upset with yourself. Speaking of people who are upset with themselves, earlier today I watched the Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul with Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown is fantastic. Love Sterling K. Brown. And that movie is not the film I think that it was advertised to be. I saw somebody on Twitter say, hey, something to note is that this movie was at least partially produced by Jordan Peele, uh, and it shows. And I, took out with a grain of salt. I typically don't care who a producer of something is. That just doesn't, anybody can be a producer if they've got the money. But as the movie progressed, I could see, like, this definitely wasn't. There's sometimes the A24 vibe. This wasn't a Shyamalan, everybody's waiting for the twist sort of thing. It wasn't, what trick is Jordan Peele going to pull? Because this wasn't a Jordan Peele movie. But I could see that it had a Jordan Peele vibe in some ways, if that makes sense. I could feel the peel. Yeah, let me get a fine line brush back. Let me clean this red out. We haven't touched the browns or our whites or blues or blacks. We are starting off pretty raw. Alright, let's get back into that red. Let's get some fine line. Fine line auto body. Hold this flat. Now the question that I ask myself is, when I paint, I have so far really liked a thick outline on things. I've liked to add a nice dark black line, kind of a comic book style. Sometimes it's to add emphasis, sometimes it's to hide my deficiencies and mistakes as a painter. But either way, I need to decide. I'm going with the raw colors, or if I am going to outline. Again, I doubt that a thick black outline is the norm for watercolors. But then again, I don't think how I'm using watercolors is the norm for watercolors. That's fine for me. I like the creative freedom that comes, experimentation born of a healthy ignorance. Not a willful ignorance, just ignorance in the traditional meaning of I lack knowledge and experience in this particular thing. Leaving some space there for the greenery to pop in. Do 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 do. And while I was sick, I wasn't even thinking of what was next. I was just waiting for my uh, cards to be delivered from their printing facility in China, and resting. And so as I was starting to recover and thinking, man, I really want to get back into doing some more painting, I had to start thinking about, hey, what is next? You finished all the mad balls you want to do for now. You've done 5 fighting game backgrounds and used up all your frames. So what's next? I tried doing a combination, trying to do fighting game mad balls. Only one I actually got done was kind of just wasn't even a mad ball style. It was just a round Zangief. It could have just been any sort of toy or novelty Zangief. I did some sketching for a Lord Raptor from Darkstalkers. And it was looking pretty good until I tried to do his goofy ass, Dragon Ball style hair. And I have never been good with that since, first attempting it back in like high school. As I said, I was considering doing a Tarman from Return of the Living Dead, because that's one where I could have some fun, with the here's the basic image of Tarman, here's the the look, and then just going off on my own, and it being so gloopy offered a lot of possibilities for, again, just really having fun with the image. But the sketch never quite landed. As I said, I'm trying to learn how to paint. Illustration is a separate skill I am not yet prepared to take a deep dive into. And so the other night, I was like, you know what? Let me look into Castlevania. I like Castlevania. The whole thing with Zelda, being the first thing I started with, was because I liked the watercolor artwork that was like in the manual, and then Nintendo Power and other stuff. Those are the first things I painted. Excuse me. An Octorok, Dungeon 4 entrance. And so I thought, hey, I would love to do some Zelda. And then I started thinking, hey, I would love to do some Legend of Zelda too. So I started prepping both of those things here. I'm going to get some more water in my dropper. One moment. Perfect. So let's start mixing up the black. Now this was probably the biggest surprise for me when I started messing with these watercolors. Was it just how inky a black paint you could get with watercolors. I mean, I just was not anticipating that at all. Okay, I'm gonna try and do a line here. All right, that's so nice. And get that one. Again, this is where I start to wonder, do I go for the outline? Maybe of just the letters. That might be the only spot where I want to really do it. And I considered briefly doing the outline here just with a pen rather than brush. But again, if we are trying to figure this stuff out, master a new skill, we need to put in the time, right? That's going to look pretty great. That's going to look pretty great. Have to be willing to attempt things and to accept our mistakes if those things we attempt don't turn out precisely as we had intended. As they so rarely do. Well, sometimes, serendipity, and we end up with results far better than what we were expecting, It's a little bit wet over there, so gotta be careful. Making still a little bit wet. This paint is a little bit thin and runny, requiring a little bit of a different hand. To keep things as intended. But it's coming along nicely. We did have to start this particular painting stream with the painting already in progress because kid number 2 was using the phone for Roblox. So we started the background coloring and the leaves. There's a small portion of them before we kicked off the stream. Had to run a couple of quick errands. We got back in time. Pick it up and start capturing the full details. Let's come up the L. Nice. Pulling the brush, never pushing the brush. Who am I to say never? I'm sure I've done it 1,000 times and I will again. Careful, filling in the space here and the shadow of the L. The shadow of an L. The Brian Stone painting story. We are always living in the shadow of an L. And we will have to hold that. And get right up in there against where the green gonna fill in for us. Rough lines. Get the line we want on the scratch board. And gotta commit. Here we go. Come on, connect. Good. The shadow of the D. That's a different story altogether, isn't it? This is gonna look dope. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good. Again, feeling happy. Across there. Down. And back. Not perfect. And that's just fine. Somebody wanted a perfect image. You just print it out. Take a screenshot, you know? But our stuff has what Sinbad and Scott Bakula and Hector Elizondo and Kathy Ireland. Robert Loggia? would refer to as necessary roughness. That was a dumb old movie reference. For those of you who are not aware of the film, Necessary Roughness used to be on HBO all the time. I wonder if I can still find it on there. With the whole HBO, Warner, Discovery debacle. I would be somewhat dubious. It's coming along, don't you think? Oh, I need to still get some nice detail there on the red for the D. Now we missed a good bit there, didn't we? Stuff you pick up as you progress and you realize you've missed a few things. We're going to need to get some of the orange going for the Triforce. And we'll come back through with the black. But first we'll get some of that red. Gotta really clean the brush. Plenty of water. Then we scrub it. Back into the water. And we scrub it. A little twist. Alright. Single drop of water there to reinvigorate. Let me be careful. We have a lot of fresh, wet black still out there that we do not want to accidentally drag our hand across. There, not bad. Do do do, doodly do, do do do. So we are going to start two drops. Well, we'll go straight with the orange. And some highlights, we can pick it up from the other colors that we had for the background, but we're going to start with the orange. How do we want to approach it? Okay, if we get a little bit over where the greenery is going to be, maybe I need to do the sword next, honestly. And then fill in around it. I can smell the chicken cooking upstairs. That's yum. Another question I ask myself sometimes is how... Crap. Just as I was going to say, how precise do I need to be? How right into the details do I need to be? As I say that, I make a mistake and paint orange over the red. So I need to be more precise than that, yes. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking, does everything need to be a true fine line? Can I let things go sometimes? And have some fuzziness. I think with watercolors, yes, fuzziness is part and parcel with the medium. But when I do so much stuff which is right up to the line, fine line precision, if I don't do it, it tends to stand out. So we need to make a decision, a conscious decision, one way or the other. Someone once said about me, I just follow the path of least resistance. I don't seek out challenges. I don't think that they were necessarily wrong. I often did lean towards progressing in the direction I was already heading, if you will. It's not all the time, but it was frequent enough that, yeah, I get where they were coming from. So when it comes to things like this, I don't want to just always go with the flow. I do kind of want, it's a tricky balance. I'm a go with the flow guy. I like that I don't stress about a lot of those things, but at the same time, I want to be mindful. I want to be thoughtful. So when it comes to, it's going to look so great, dropping in the sword here, and how close I get to the sword. You know what? let's hit the sword. We have a really fine brush, but it's really long. So sometimes it's hard for me to manage. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, well, it's time to take a break for dinner anyway, so we're going to let this set for a little bit, and we will come back, do some more painting later this evening. Thanks. Bye.